Hello, this is week 7 in the AI Robots and Ethics course. And this week we have one reading. It's going to be a portion of the book, Thinking Otherwise. We're going to be reading pages 93 to 157, which is the section of the text that deals with moral patiency. As you remember from last week, we're turning our attention from the question of moral agency, which is sort of the standard way we ask about moral inclusion and who is not or what is not moral subject. Moral patiency shifts the question a bit. It asks about the recipient of an action as opposed to the enabler or the deciding agent in making a decision or performing an action. And it really is rooted in innovations that come out of the animal rights movement in the 1970s. If you remember from some of the earlier stuff we've read, animal rights has a way of shifting the emphasis from the actor to the receiver of an action and asking not about the responsibilities of the one who acts, but about the rights of the one who is either harmed or benefited by the act. This stems from a development that Jeremy Bentham introduces, where he asks the question isn't whether or not the entity can reason or use language or think with consciousness, but rather it's can the entity suffer? Can the entity experience pain or pleasure? And as a result, we wouldn't hold a dog, for example, culpable for something that it does, like biting the postman. But we would, for example, hold someone responsible for beating a dog if such abuse or violence harms the dog in some particular way. And that is what we really are talking about with moral patiency. We're talking about if something can be harmed, do we have any responsibilities to it, and what are those responsibilities with regards to its standing as a moral patient with rights that we need to take into account and consider. Now, from last week, we know that the question of moral patiency when it gets into higher life forms like you and I and now robots is the question whether or not they're persons. We know that the category person is distinct from the category of human being. Human being is a species identification, and person is a moral and legal category which articulates whether or not something is a moral patient. So, for example, a corporation, in terms of current law, is a moral patient. You can harm a corporation. You can actually do something that would cause a major international multinational corporation to lose money or be harmed in some way, and a court could find in its favor with regards to a lawsuit or other proceedings like this. The same is true for dolphins in India, which are considered now moral persons with rights that we have responsibilities to this entity, or with this river in New Zealand, which was recently declared a moral and legal person by the court in New Zealand. So the question that we're asking last week and this week is whether or not it is feasible that a robot or an AI or some other algorithm would at some point achieve the status of personhood. Could we consider a home healthcare robot to be a person and therefore needing some level of moral consideration? Remember from last week, Bryson is on one side of the argument saying no, they're just tools, treat them like slaves. And other thinkers like David Cavalieri is on the other side saying, no, we need to start thinking reasonably and deeply about these entities, these artifacts, having some claim on moral personhood that then obligates us in one way or another. So this week, we're going to be a little further down the stream here with moral patiency and ask more critical questions about the opportunities of moral patiency for developing a idea of robot rights or some other way of treating robots. But we're also going to be critical of it and ask, are there any problems with extending patiency to machines? We've done it with animals. We've done it with corporations. There's obviously some benefits there. But are there any problems with this? Are there any difficulties when we start to extend the idea of personhood to objects like robots, AIs, algorithms, and other machines? This week we'll be then looking at a number of different possibilities where we get into some trouble. There's going to be some terminological problems. There's going to be some epistemological problems, some methodological problems, and even some moral problems. And what we want to do is begin to fully appreciate what the costs and benefits are with regards to extending the status of person to artifacts, and see what obtains if we do so and what happens if we don't do so. So, as usual, I've posted questions on the course website. I encourage you to read those ahead of time before you do the reading of the text. And then as you're doing the reading, try to record your responses in your reading log or your journal so that you're able to keep track of your own thinking about this matter, and really try not just to understand what other people are saying about this, but try to come up with your own understanding of it and your own evaluation of what personhood is all about, whether or not you would agree to extend personhood to machines, and if you do, why, and if you do not, why not? That will help us get a little more critical perspective on this, because obviously the jury is still out on this matter, and you can bet in the next 2 or 3 decades there's going to be a lot of debate about the social, legal, civil, and moral standing of the various objects and artifacts that begin to populate our world and have an effect on us and our communities. That's all I have. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.